to Lifestyle Pirates with Big J and Adriano in partnership with Bio Australia.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to episode 82 of Lifestyle Pirates with me, Big J, and him, Adriano.
Buongiorno.
Big shout out and thank you to all our subscribers for liking and clicking all the links and comments. Loving the feedback on the shows so far, and very much looking forward to this one. This episode, we're joined by Tatafu Polota Nau. Mate, how are you?
I'm well, thanks. Thanks for having me on this awesome podcast.
Hey, you're very
Thanks,
welcome.
mate. Thanks for coming.
No, wish you would have invited me earlier.
Yeah, John. Got to get on that, mate.
My bad. Mate, we are obviously going to talk about rugby union this evening, but we're not just going to talk about it. We're going to talk about a hell of a lot more. First things first, when I did a little bit of Googling of you, mate, you've had some serious fucking haircuts over the years.
So I guess, I obviously didn't read the bio that came along with that.
Oh, there's a reason behind
absolutely. I've been
haircuts.
running away from the cops ever since I was 15, just trying to avoid them at all costs.
Yeah.
I mean, growing up in the streets of Parramatta wasn't ideal, but I wish.
They put on you over for your haircuts.
Well,
It was the fashion police.
it wasn't necessarily that. I think it was more trying to avoid publicity at all costs.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I must have been dropped on my head where there's this nice scar, like if I shave bald. So I was just trying to cover that at any cost possible. So, yeah, not one for the faint-hearted.
Yeah.
But I guess maybe if someone challenges me to go bald, maybe that could be exposed.
Oh,
Yeah.
Well, I tell you might be joining me in a few years because I'm getting follically challenged.
Yeah,
as
you don't need to be challenged.
Mate,
You got your own
I
challenges.
keep putting sun cream further and further back on my head every year. But no, in all seriousness, mate, I mean, that you've had a very long and distinguished rugby union career.
No, cheers.
Following, traveled the world with it as well, which I want to talk to you about. For those of you that don't know who we're talking to, Tatafu has had 90 caps for the Wallabies. He's played for the Waratahs, the Western Force, and Leicester over in the UK, where I'm from, and also the Barbarians as well.
Wait, you're from Leicester?
No, UK.
Okay.
No,
Just checking.
I'm further south, mate. The posher part.
Congratulations, by the way, mate. That's a nice rap sheet.
Oh, no, appreciate that, Adrian. I guess one thing, I think it's all like made up according to Wikipedia, because apparently you can change statistics.
Well, no,
Are you the editor?
this was actually from like a historical Wallabies.
Oh,
rugby
right.
players
Archive.
website,
Oh,
because
geez.
Wikipedia said 45 caps. And then I looked at a few other websites and they were like 90.
Damn. All right. Well, guess what?
I mean, is that right?
Well, I need to work on my editing skills. Yeah.
Can you remember all of those 90 games?
Actually, I can. What's interesting is with each test match, you get your own test jersey, and you've got the option to either swap it or keep it, just because you only get one jersey. About 2015, they reinstalled the fact that you're able to have a first half jersey and a second half jersey, regardless. You get to swap.
Yeah.
But I think they reinstated the fact that all the jerseys were embroidered with the actual test date and test match and location. So it was pretty sentimental in the sense that, well, right now I actually swap all my I give my jerseys away because no point being in a bag. It's good to share with people that are close to you about the journey that I've been on.
Yeah, nice.
And it's particularly based for little kids that want to sort of aspire, not just to get to that stage, but travel the world.
Yeah.
Because I challenge them to, if they ever get to that stage, get to this location, there's plenty of things to do, and here's a rap sheet.
Yeah, nice.
So, yeah, I think back to your question of all the test matches, you remember every single one because you always treat that one as your last.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
sweet.
Mate, I mean, you say the word journey, which, I mean, it's one of my favourite words. I know Adriana hates it.
great band as well.
Mate, where did
Absolutely. Don't stop believing.
oh, geez, here we go. Where did rugby start for you? What got you into rugby? I mean, obviously, you're sitting next to two other big units as well, and that normally defaults us in the sports selection side. But what was it that you enjoyed about rugby?
Yeah, interesting question. I actually didn't start rugby till I was in year 10. Beforehand, I actually had a few goes at rugby league, but I didn't have coaches that were coachable. in the sense that I was curious to learn about patterns and, my favourite subject was science and physics, but I didn't really know how to apply that on the rugby league field because I think they were just trying to limit your exploration in terms of what you can and can't do. What I loved about rugby was this PE teacher transferred to our school. He thought we all played rugby. We're like, what on earth is that? So he sat us down in the classroom and he made us watch 2 Wallabies versus All Blacks tests. It's like, hang on. These guys...
Was he trying to motivate you or what?
Well, no. We're looking at it. We're like, why are they giving each other wedgies? So in the line out, you're lifting people up.
Yeah.
And looked like they were giving each other's wedgies.
Yeah.
But also like the clash of heads in a scrum.
Yeah.
It's like, what on earth is that? So... From there, he actually gave us a few lessons. Our high school was unfortunately marked as the most truantable, meaning they cancelled Tuesday afternoon sport. So every Tuesday afternoon you play against other schools. But our school got demoted because most people spent the time truanting.
Yeah,
or
they didn't
jigging.
turn up.
No, they'd go wag in the fish and chip shop or whatever they do.
Or get their braids done, mate, hey?
Oh, yeah, probably. But
That was one of your haircuts.
yeah, but I'll elaborate on that later. But I think so. Rather than having Tuesday afternoon sport, we had 2 periods focused on PDHPE, and that's where this PE teacher said, "Right, look, here are a couple of lessons. Don't worry about that. We're going on an excursion to the Powerhouse Museum just down the road here in Ultimo. Yep. However, you actually need some cleated footwear because there's synthetic turf." Little did we realise, he actually signed me and a few other mates up for a rugby union trial. And he said, right, before we go to the Powerhouse Museum, you know what you learnt in these 2 periods? Go put it out there. And then we said, okay, sure. But what I loved about it was I actually applied all my learnings from science into rugby in terms of geometry, finding the shortest way possible to each of the rucks, but also in the sense of applying physics. So getting lower and then using the ground to deliver your force. Yeah, it was pretty impressive. So I was pretty fortunate that year, starting from like a prospect trial in terms of your zone, almost making it up to schoolboys in the first year just because of science. So, and then I think from there, the teacher said, look, you got talent, kid, and you actually got application, so let's make the most of it. I said, look, find me in the library. I'd much prefer being there.
Yeah. And so how old were you then?
15.
15?
Yeah.
Okay.
Before we go on to anything else, please explain it for someone who plays round ball. What's the difference between union and rugby? Wait, union and league? I can't even tell you the difference.
Shall I tell you, I've been so excited for this episode because whenever we talk about football or soccer or motorsport
Football, you said it right.
I'm all at sea now. You're the naked one. You haven't got a clue. This is fantastic.
I don't think I've ever watched a game.
So Tatafu's school is in session for this man.
No. Let me put it this way. How familiar are you with checkers and chess?
Quite.
Okay, so think of rugby league as checkers in the sense that it's quite simple in terms of the tactics, whereas think of rugby as in chess because you're not only trying to dominate territory, you're actually trying to retain possession.
Okay.
And in chess, you're always trying to think 3 moves ahead to trap the king.
Okay.
So,
but is there a king, or is it just the ball?
The king is the try line.
Okay.
So you're trying to capture the king as many times as possible.
Okay.
Yeah. So, not sure if that answers your question, but
it kind of gives it a bit of a definition to which one's more of a refined sport, though, which is sort of what I sort of understood, that union was a sort of a more of a challenging game, and I heard league was just sort of a bit scrappy.
Well, put it this way, I think if we actually go back to history, the place rugby is actually in the Midlands where...
It's in Coventry, just outside Coventry.
Correct. And there's a statue of this person whose name is William Ware Bellis. The reason why he became famous is because they were playing football. However, he decided to pick the ball up and started running off with it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that's how rugby was born.
Yeah.
But then, fast forward 50 years later, people up north were jealous of those rich schools because ideally rugby was installed in the richer schools.
Yeah.
So they came up with their own version called Rugby League.
Okay.
And that's how it sort of eventuated out.
So it's not just played in Australia.
No.
No, it's played everywhere.
It
League.
originated from England.
Yeah.
And I think that's where they came across the shores and instilled it, not just in Australia, but also in New Zealand, South Africa, everywhere that they colonised, really.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for that.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's starting to pick up in Italy now.
Yeah?
Which is great.
What,
it's great
Union,
for the sport.
yeah?
Yeah,
Union is. I heard they've got a good team.
Great team.
Or no.
So how well are you with history in terms of people migrating from Italy?
Other than parents? A little bit.
Okay.
Because I know they went to Argentina, USA.
Correct.
Yeah.
So a lot of Italians come from Argentina because of the migration. So not only is Argentina influenced by Italy, but vice versa in the sense that most Argentinians play their trade in Italy for the Italian rugby team.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if I'm speaking Italian or Spanish to these guys.
Yeah. There's a blur between the two.
Or just hand language.
Yeah, a couple glasses of sangria or wine, you can speak both.
Say less.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I love it. So, yeah, hopefully that answers your question. But
and just for the record, by the way, the Argentinian footballers in Argentina that are good are ex-Italians.
Correct. No,
just to let you know.
No, absolutely right. So I follow River Plate.
Yeah.
Which I'm not sure if you're aware of the local derby there, John. So 2 football teams in Buenos Aires.
Yep.
Boca Juniors, Maradona.
Best.
Yep. River Plate. So it all started in this one area called Boca, or La Boca, which means the mouth.
The mouth.
Yep. But then they decided to split ways because they just wanted to be territorial in the sense of being the better football team. But it's one of the best games. If you ever get the chance to go visit, do it.
Yeah, it's outrageous, man. If you want to see what football fans are really like and the atmosphere, that's the game to watch. Yeah, absolutely. They had to put cages around the field.
And I thought the hooligans in England were bad.
Yeah.
We've developed quite the reputation over the years, you could say.
No, but I think it's just another way of saying how passionate the fans are, which is great.
It's passion.
Yeah, we can call it passion. Yeah. We can call it passion.
How you channel it is a different story, right?
And so what was the progression like then? So if you're 15, obviously you're learning, but if this PE teacher, this coach has seen that you've got a bit of talent, so what was that kind of progression like through being a school and not being, truant, but then also developing your skills and learning the game a bit more?
Yeah, so his best advice was in that year that I started off rugby was to learn both forwards and backs.
Yeah.
So rugby team split up into forwards and backs. Forwards are your people that need to get momentum for the backs to actually capitalize in space. So in school, I learnt how to be a forward. In club rugby, I learnt how to be a back. And it was a very eye-opening experience in the sense that you actually give respect to the people in the backs because most people frown upon them because they don't do much. However, so I played 5/8, which is the key position in terms of making the decisions. You really get a good glimpse of both what's in front of you, what's behind you, but what's beside you as well. So rather than, because I always thought playing the game of rugby, it's all about inches, when in fact it's all about territory.
Yeah.
Territory and pressure. You ever studied geology?
No.
Ever watch Shawshank Redemption?
Yes.
Okay. So what Red quotes about geology is pressure and time. That's exactly what sport is.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So I'm sure you would have learned that in football, right?
I was no good. But pressure and time. So how would I apply that to football?
Well, you'd know that from the racetrack, surely.
Yeah, for motorsport, 100%. Yeah. I suppose it's a lot of sort of sport things you can relate to.
And so are you saying, I'm picking up that you're kind of saying that you're, obviously you had talent and ability, but you applied actually a lot of what you learned at school on the rugby pitch.
Literally.
Yeah. I've never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
That's huge.
And what was interesting was how some of my teammates asked, why are you analysing it that way? Well, I said, why are you relying on luck when you actually can rely on statistics? Because most people tend to gamble, which is great, but if you're taking the law of averages, the more you do it, the more successful you become. So why not?
Do you think playing forward and back as well, you understood how to exploit both of those positions? Because you know what those people are going to do because you played that position. You know what the front's going to do because you played that position, and now you can exploit both sides.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you can switch between that mind. You're like, I know what you're going to do.
Exactly that, in the sense that you don't want the forwards to exhaust all their energy. Thus, that's where you take control of, right, backs, let's do our job, give the forwards a break. And you sort of want to keep that to a cycle, but that's where the game has evolved in the sense that rather than going through that cycle, or what we call a vicious cycle, you actually plan the field so that people have their sort of designated territories and they're responsible for that area.
Yeah.
So when's the last time have you ever watched a game of rugby?
No, not really.
No, that's okay. I think if you ever get to, just understand two things. The reason why they kick is to relieve pressure from their own half. Or if they're kicking in someone else's half, there's a new rule called the 50-22 rule. It's to put pressure on the opposition.
Yeah.
So essentially they made this new law to make the game more exciting.
Okay.
So rather than having people just do kick tennis, you're trying to assess where their players are on the field at any given time so that the smarter kickers can actually put the ball into space.
Yeah.
So
I suppose I'm going to compare the sport that I love, so Formula One, compared to rugby, right? So when I've watched half a match of rugby and I was watching it, I was like, man, I don't understand enough about this game to enjoy it. So I just feel like a fish out of water. And for me, it was like, all right, I don't really know what's going on, so I can't really apply or get engaged in it. And the same thing with Formula One. You know, a lot of people, if you watch a Formula One race for the first time, you think, like, this is dog shit boring. You know, these cars are just going round and round in circles. I don't really understand strategies or anything else like that. So I think it must be like that as well because, yeah, you mentioned it's like chess. So, you know, I think I just need to apply myself a little bit more to the game to actually enjoy it. Maybe next time, mate.
no,
Sign me
Well,
up.
we've got the British Lions over next year, mate. Maybe you can come.
okay.
Come and watch.
That's something you need to get behind because the British and Irish Lions is a team made up of England, Ireland, Scotland and Wales.
Oh, okay.
So the purpose of this team was to promote the game of rugby.
So it's not a national team. It's the whole UK.
Yeah,
It's kind of the three. Yeah, we'll just say the cream of the crop of all three teams.
correct. So,
And they're all good teams.
well, right now they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, I mean,
That
bar
wasn't
one.
me laughing at you. No,
Yeah.
because it's subjective.
Correct. So,
You're such a good diplomat, mate.
well, no. I think for the game itself,
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
So, this team was designed to promote the game of rugby in the Southern Hemisphere. So, every 4 years, they will go to, every 12 years, they'll share their load between Australia, South Africa, and New Zealand to promote the game of rugby. And they'll send a team of 45 of their best players from each of those countries. So they play midweek games against the States, but then they play a 3 test match series against the Wallabies. The beauty about this is that you only get one shot in your career to play against them. Unfortunately, I broke my arm. No, but that was just my fault. Bad tackle technique. But the atmosphere that it created is immense. Like a World Cup.
Yeah.
But it's dominated by the British.
Yeah. So it's every 12 years this game.
Correct.
Yeah, that's why you only once in your career you're going to be able to play it.
Or if you're lucky, like some that get it at the start
Right
and
at the
end.
beginning, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, how good must you be to be picked straight away from the beginning of your career?
Well, unfortunately, I fall into that category. Yeah.
I don't think that's unfortunate, man.
Well, I think it is because I guess to elaborate a bit more on your question in terms of the development path. So when I got to year 12, I was actually picked out of high school to go join one of the state unions to develop my game. And then, so I went to Canberra for 2 years, learned the trade of both hooker and prop. So I was playing in the back row. There's 8 forwards and they're divided into front row, a second row and a back row. The back row is what's called the midfielders, because they connect the backs with the forwards. Front row is where like the brainiacs are. The reason why is because they need to understand physics so quickly that they need to drive the force of the back five into their own bodies and transfer that across. So, but that's just my biased opinion.
Yeah.
Anyway, I digress. So from the 2 years development, came back, played what we call under 21s, which is like your junior world championships. We lost the final against South Africa, and then we came back, played club rugby. So Sydney club rugby is notorious for the eastern suburbs dominating, and obviously the western suburbs falling pretty short. I also stubborn that I wanted to prove that the western suburbs are ideal. It's just having the resources. Anyway, so I played against one of the leading teams in Eastern Shores. Just so happened that the Wallaby selection staff were there. So I stuck out like a sore thumb that by the time it came around Mad Monday for our club team, I get a phone call. G'day, mate. This is Eddie Jones from the Wallabies. Just wanted to congratulate you on making the Wallaby squad. And I'm...
How old are you?
I'm 20. Fuck. No, but think at that time, Mad Monday, you're not in a state to answer calls.
So what's Mad Monday for people that don't know?
Sorry. For people that don't know, Mad Monday is where...
And when I say people, Adriano.
I can out me like that.
No, so I guess you spend
Thank
a
you.
whole long season playing your sport, and obviously you sort of want to be at your best, where at the end of the year, depending where you finish, you obviously celebrate as a team together. So usually the games would finish on a Saturday, and then you have Sunday and Monday to drink together. But anything can happen.
Yeah, fucking have.
Yeah. So
Don't bring that to the racetrack, man.
DCMs, don't come Monday. No.
So you got the call when you were 17 million schooners in.
I think I dropped some 17 million more than I drank. So yeah, it got to the point I just hung up on him.
You're like, fuck.
Yeah, 2 minutes later, the manager calls. So
As in your manager?
no, the
Wallabies
Wallabies team
manager.
manager. Yeah.
No way.
Sorry, we need you ASAP in 2 days' time at Victoria Barracks. Show up.
So you're 20 years old.
Fuck, how do you process that?
And you've just got called up to represent your country.
Yeah. So in a calendar year, for people that don't know what a rugby season looks like, so it's split up into two halves. You play what's called the state. You play at that time. You played against New Zealand teams and South African teams, so you traverse back and forth. And then it's split up into the test season where you play New Zealand and South Africa in what's called the Tri-Nations. This was before Argentina came into the fray. Anyway, it starts from February, it goes all the way to November, and then you got December to have a month off.
Fuck, that's a lot of
It is
play
long.
time.
Yeah, that's right. So in November, they what's called a spring tour, and they select a group of 35 to 40 people, because you play around 4 games against each of the teams in Europe, plus or minus Italy at that point. So this is the call to say, right, we want you on this spring tour because we believe you've got the goods. And so I was just thinking I was there to be like a rookie. To be introduced to the system, learn the ins and outs. So that year we played France, England, Ireland, and Scotland. Oh, sorry, Wales. I missed out France, but then got the tap on the shoulder to say, you're playing against England.
Fuck.
Yeah. And actually, let me take you a step back. So when I got named to the Wallabies, my mum was shitting herself. So she took me down to the local pastor, which was like down 2 streets from where we lived. And she literally said, "Oh, Pastor, please bless him because he's going away for so long. And I don't know what he's going to do." I'm like, "Mum, I'm an adult. What are you doing?" But the pastor's like, No, you got to understand. This is your mother. She's been looking after you for, I think, 18 years of your life. Or who knows? But I said to him, "What do you mean? I've been her slave for the past 18 years. What are you on about?" Anyway, so it was quite funny in the sense that she actually gave a shit when the news came out. But obviously, at that time, she couldn't afford to come over and watch the games. But she woke up and watched the games. We were lucky. I was lucky to have family over there that my mum would always call and say, "Oh, how's he going?"
Well, because you've got siblings as well, haven't you? Was your family aware of your talent? Did they, or I mean, were they encouraging? Were they across it, or was it just something that you did?
Yeah, never really thought of that. If anything, I'm actually the black sheep of the family.
Right.
Well,
Preach.
yeah. So I'd always go against the grain because my parents are both Tongan and they met here and then had us 3. But I wasn't a big believer of them instilling what they knew from Tonga in this country.
Yeah.
When I'm like, hang on, you're telling us this, but our schools are telling us another thing. So something didn't add up. But I was pretty fortunate that you remember those volumes of encyclopedia?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Britannica.
my go-to. Yeah. Probably had a cheaper version than Britannica, but it was. I just enjoyed learning more about the world from that. So every time we'd have a family gathering, I'm nowhere to be seen because my mum already knows that I'm in my bedroom just reading that.
Yeah. Fuck, I love it that you're a nerd.
Yeah, I enjoy it. I think what most people don't realise is they think because you do rugby, you just rugby.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily that there's more than meets the eye. It's more you only know what you know.
I need to bring this back because there's so much I wanted to unpack about you.
Sorry, mate.
Getting a fucking call up, right? You're going overseas. You get the call up. You go to Spring. I probably butchered that hot timeline, but so you mentioned you thought you were going to get the call up to just be a junior.
Mm-hmm.
But what did you play the first game?
No. So typically in those squads, they in my position, which is called hooker,
Yeah.
and not the ones that used to be on Oxford Street.
Yeah, okay.
The ones that
I thought I did see you there. But no.
Well, maybe in a past lifetime. So essentially, how the position came up is because in the scrum, we have to hook the ball back to win possession. Other than that, we're quite useless. So, yeah, tis on a bull, I'd say. Anyway, I think what's important is from that, they had 2 well-versed hookers. And this is where I thought, right, I can just learn the tricks of the trade. But then, so we lost to France, and the coach was in a position that he needed to make a few changes. Otherwise, he'd get the boot. So he made 3 changes, and I was one of the 3. But that test match I remember so vividly because I came on to a position that I had no idea about. So,
oh, really?
So, yeah. There was a guy that got stretchered off because of his neck as a precaution, and then someone got red carded.
Is that the same as football red card?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So I had to come into a position, didn't learn much about it, but we're against England who know how to scrum. So scrumming is just a physical force of 8 guys trying to get domination. And at that time, the English team were like starstruck of talent, but also reputation and experience. So here I am shitting myself on the sideline saying, fuck, I really have to pack against these guys. But it turned out a good learning experience because you play a lot of fear in your head before you actually get out there. But the fear isn't scaredness; it's fear of messing up. FOMO is what I call it. Yeah, because the last thing you want to do is like let your teammate down.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, there was plenty of FOMO in my early career.
Yeah. So when you got out there, how'd you go?
All right. Did my job well. So one of my friends actually captured this moment where my first interaction was an offload. And after the game, Eddie Jones comes up to me and says, "Mate, this ain't Parramatta rugby, mate." So what he meant by that is...
Don't risk shit.
Correct.
Yeah.
Like, be conservative. Well, I'm like, well, the guy was right there. He was free.
Yeah, yeah.
And I had a free arm open. So there's a rule in terms of offloads. You actually have to have an arm free, but extend it versus just a flick.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, there's this really nice photo that my friend captured, and I've got it framed as part of my test debut. So yeah, very fortunate. Actually, do you know a guy named Wendell Saylor?
Yeah.
Oh, so great guy. Goes by the self-acclaimed name, The Dell. Never talks about himself in first person. It's always in third.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The Dell.
The Dell.
Oh,
Yeah.
Stop it.
So he's like, "Hey, Adriano, when the big Dell comes into town, everybody stops and watches him." Yeah, it's great. I think it was just a really nice...
He does the same thing.
Yeah, but he can.
Big J.
Yeah,
Still got it, mate.
exactly. So, and he stuck up for me for doing that offload.
Yeah?
Which was great. Yeah. So, because being conservative versus risk averse can often lead to strife, but at that time, yes.
Yeah, risk and reward. I bet he said that because he wanted to say that because that's the company line that you want to toe, you know. But really, in his head, he's like, you know what, that was a fucking good move that you did. You know, you did it at the right time and it pulled off, but it can go horribly wrong. So
Correct.
he sort of just has to say that. So after that move, and you got questioned about it, or you got told about it, were you on full time after that?
Well, I was fortunate to play the rest of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or
Legend.
the rest of the games.
Yeah.
But still coming off the bench. So I was sort of, the way he phrased it in my mind was, "You're out there to make a difference." I said, "Great."
Did you see yourself as the right choice over the other? There was two other hooks at that time.
Good question. I didn't know what to think. If anything, I was just thinking, wow, do I even... I had imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Am I even meant to be here?
Yeah. I mean, we all get that.
Correct. But I think being a 20-year-old, if I had my time again...
Yeah, that's quite a lot of pressure as well, getting into that position at that age.
Well, I think it was a combination of both how I was brought up, because in a typical Tongan culture, it's never about you. It's about the collective.
Yeah.
So,
good.
Yeah, it's good to a point, because I guess it's when they become adults, they become indecisive. So that's where you got to find the right balance of when to make decisions.
My missus must be Tongan.
Yeah.
She must be, mate. She's very indecisive.
Well, it's a commonality amongst all men because it's quite matriarchal society. So, excuse me.
Yeah.
They go off on what the mother recommends.
Yeah.
Probably because she spends most of the time at home delegating, "Oh, do this, do that, do that." It's okay, but it doesn't last you in a place like this where you've got to make decisions on your own. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, so what really goes on in a scrum?
Do you want the scientific definition or do you want the tough definition?
No, let's give it the tough definition.
I'll spew on.
Okay. No, you'll probably like this, Adriano. So when I was playing, I would never talk to my opposition. I'd talk to the props who are holding the...
So to give you some context, so there's three people on the front row of the scrum. The hooker is in the middle, and you have props either side, tight head and loose head prop. So that's the front row of the scrum.
And that's front.
So imagine you're racking up a set of balls for a pool.
Yeah.
It's not too dissimilar to that formation, the scrum formation.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've got 3 across the front. So
the
Tatafu would
hook
be
grabs
in
it
the
and
middle.
pulls it back.
Yeah. Yeah. So when
With your leg.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
yeah. So
Your arms are.
you're kind of all bound.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
All
They
bound
are.
like this.
Yeah.
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 You'd be a rubbish hooker.
American. I'll be good.
Anyway,
No, so
you talk to the props.
because my strength was never actually playing. It was more the mental games. I'd give the opposite hooker, and that's where my lip service came in diligently. So I would always ask the props, "Excuse me, can I ask a question? What's it like carrying some awful waste alongside you this whole time?" Well, the reason why I'm saying this is because I just wanted to see how he reacted, if I'm in their head or not.
Yeah.
Most of the time you are,
Yeah.
because they'll reply back to you. But still, I'll direct my question back to that prop, in a sense that, sorry, there must be some wind going on around here. I can't quite hear you. But it's always mind games, because I think that's what sport is.
Yeah.
It's 20% physical, 80% mental,
Yeah.
as you would know with your experience as well.
Yeah, I'd see that. So, and I apologize because I'm such a idiot when it comes to this sport, and I don't want this to talk about how rugby works. But
We're all learning.
why is the ball there in the beginning, and why did the scrum happen?
Good question. So the scrum is, so think of rugby that any type of possession is always a contest. So sure, you get favoritism in terms of, say, if the ball goes out, someone has to throw it in from the opposition team. And that's where it's called a line out. So they have codes to know which jumper's going to throw, and the hooker, which is my job, I throw it to that target. So that's a favorable way to win possession. If the ball's knocked on, so you can knock it backwards, but you can't knock it forwards. That will constitute a scrum or a forward pass.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm up to date.
So think of it as offense, defense, and restarts. So a restart will be a kickoff or a 22 or a line out or a scrum.
So we've spoken about the Lions. I mean, when you reflect back now, were there teams that you were excited to play against, or were there teams that you feared? And I guess kind of what was that like, you know?
Yeah, good question. So if there was one team I always loved playing, it's England. I don't know. There's always that. So I think there's a commonality. I'm not too sure. But in all rugby teams, the notion is anyone but England to win. Maybe because they brought up the game, or the fact that most of the funding is there, but also I think it's just the availability of the sport is centralised there. But I don't know. There's always this regal aura that they carry.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Adriano, to the point where you feel like you're being looked down upon.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, the English do that.
I mean, yeah, what I love is that being brought up here, using history, is to say, hey, sending us to a jail when it's actually a paradise. Yeah, go figure.
All right.
Yeah.
Did all right.
There's just things like that.
Then they travel here.
Yeah. So, but if there was one team I love playing the most, it's always the All Blacks.
Yeah.
Because at that period that I was playing, they were the epitome. They were so consistent that mentally they were so strong in terms of adversity. So we'd be up by 3 or 4 tries. For some reason, they just find a way to claw back and eventually win the game. So it's observing that resilience from their end, but also how do you emulate it in your own culture, in your own team? I just love the fact that there was this one guy named Richie McCaw, world famous rugby player. Why he's famous is because of his leadership he made some calls, but the calls were based on what's best for the team and for the country. And now South Africa is starting to take over as the number one team.
Okay.
You're aware rugby has a World Cup?
Yeah, isn't it only like 7 countries?
20.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but not as competitive as the Football World Cup.
Yeah.
Yeah, where you got 32. But in saying that, it's starting to grow, which is great. And I just hope for the sport itself. The sport itself taught me so many values and lessons in terms of when shit hits the wall, sure, you can control what you control, but you also have teammates that you can rely upon.
Yeah.
And before we started this podcast, you mentioned, John, about we don't talk enough as men. I think it's super important because here we are. I'll take golf as an example. I'll take my frustration out on this little dimpled white ball only because it feels great.
Yeah.
And we should be doing that more often. But with each other in terms of just being able to vent.
Yeah. Do you find in that team environment that you guys actually talk a lot?
To some extent, I think where the power of talking a lot comes through more is being vulnerable about your own situation, your own feelings, but also for the people that are receiving this information, that it's just information. There's no need to judge, no need to analyze. It's just happening.
Yeah.
Too often we always try to fix things.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah. When really all we need to do is just analyze it, agree with it,
Yeah.
move on.
Or just hear it.
Yeah, listen.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just need to listen.
So, yeah, I really love that statement that you said about that, John, because that's what rugby taught me, is that why on earth do I have to put all my family frustration through this game when I can actually discuss it with my teammates who might be going through the same thing. They might not, but they're there to listen, which is great.
What's it like facing the hacker?
Oh, man, that was my question, eh?
It's just because you read it on my book.
Yeah, great. I think, there's two aspects of it. The haka, have you seen the evolution of the haka?
I've seen it many times, but I didn't know there was an evolution.
So go on YouTube tonight, watch the evolution of haka, the haka. Because it started off with guys slapping their...
Yeah.
It was like they were slapping themselves silly like there was mosquitoes on it, and to a point that now it's actually a real confronting challenge.
Yeah.
And that's great. I think the more awareness in terms of the cultural history with the Maori folk shines through. At the same time, from watching it, it actually fires you up.
I love it.
It fired me up. Yeah, because I'm just looking at one person. I say, all right, I'll bring it to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. I think it's such a cool thing to do as well.
Yeah.
I love it when they do that before a game. I always wondered if it was like intimidating, but I love that it revved you up.
Yeah. And there were 2 versions of it. And this is what I mean by the evolution of it. So 2 different challenges, 2 different meanings. 1, we're coming together. 2, we're going to bring it. So it was up to the captain of what challenge they wanted to propose.
Okay.
And you'll be able to see the 2 different variations of it, which is great to
that's
watch
awesome.
and
I didn't
spectate.
know that.
Yeah.
Was it? I think it was John Eales. There was a Wallaby player that turned his back on the hacker. Was it John Eales?
I think there was a team that turned their back on the haka. I think it was Wales.
But no, it was an Aussie. It was a Wallaby that did it, and they turned their back on the hacker, and then they went for years not winning. And there's a documentary actually where he then goes to New Zealand to, in essence, learn and find the origin of it.
Yeah, wow.
Really, really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
What a ball bag, though.
Well, I guess there's an element of trying to regain back control, right? So if you're finding it confronting, but I don't know. Yeah, it's quite an interesting little. It's an interesting little doco if you want to check it out.
No, absolutely, and I think on that point, it's more of a psyche. Yeah. Sure, they're laying a challenge, but what are you bringing?
Yeah. And so when you, talk to me about some of your. Because what I've loved is every time you've spoken, you just smile, mate. So these are obviously really good memories. But were there any kind of dark times? Because you're still relatively young when you're going on this journey. You're away from family. You're traveling. You're hanging out with new people that probably different ages, and there's an inordinate amount of pressure on you as well. Were there any kind of times you were just like, I can't. This is not me. This is not for me.
Oh, how long's a piece of string, John? So many times where. Let me see if I can articulate this. There's periods in time in the journey that I wanted to say, nah, fuck this. Simply because my headspace wasn't there. My physicality was, but my headspace was saying, nah, this is too much.
What was too much?
The environment, the...
Pressure?
No, it wasn't pressure. It was more... Actually, it was more the load of my family. So I always thought I'm representing my family, let alone the country. And for some reason, I took it in a negative context that it was don't let them down or they'll dismiss you. But I never had any of those family members speak up. It wasn't until I actually retired that my mum and dad actually said, oh, no, we were really proud.
Yeah, of course.
But I said, okay, well, where was that validation when I needed it the most? Yeah. So there was a time, I think it was 2016, we lost to the All Blacks in a very narrow game. And I think that was when I was thinking of retiring from the test arena. I just did not talk to anyone. The coach was asking, where are you? Why aren't you in the team meetings? I just said, oh, look, just there's something internal I need to address. And it was great that he allowed me that space. But yeah, I think looking back, when I first started the rugby journey, not one point my parents validated that they were proud of me. And yeah, it really scorned me inside because, I don't know, I think everybody yearns to belong to something. So yeah, that was probably one of my darkest times because to come out of it, I had to rely on my teammates. So is it bad that my parents don't give me that validation that they're proud of me or what I'm doing? So I think they are. You just don't know it. Or they actually don't know how to express it. So, yeah. And I said, you know what? When I sat down with them after that, like I broke down. I just said, look, not one time did you say you were proud. Yeah, it was like a big silence. But I actually felt heard for the first time. So it would have been great if I knew that earlier because it would have given me more motivation to actually go out there and play. But most of the time from when I started to 2016, I just thought, fuck, am I even doing this for the right people? I was never thinking of myself. I was thinking more of the people that I represent.
And that comes from that collective you spoke about.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. And that's where I think one of our mental coaches really identified the analogy of the mask in an aeroplane. You actually need to put your mask on before helping others.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really sort of stood out then. So that's when I started to reassess, reevaluate, but also redevelop that passion again. Because I think I just said, yeah, I owe this to myself more than anyone else.
I love, thank you for sharing that. I love the fact you spoke about, you were physically fit and I can imagine you'd have been training like a nutter. I'm curious to see what you're reading and what your training regime was, but to then acknowledge that you weren't mentally fit, because I think a lot of us will discount that. They'll go, we'll go to the gym all the time. are working hard, out on the piss or whatever I'm doing, but they're missing something up here, right, in their headspace, and that's such a massive part, is to look after you first, and then the rest, I believe it does kind of look after itself. So
no, absolutely. And I think on top of that, John, is where going through that was probably one of the best lessons I've learned in life.
Yeah,
is you only know what you know internally. If you actually take time to explore, it's like, oh shit, didn't realize I had this capacity in me.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you would have experienced it, Adriano, in your career as well, that when shit hits the wall, you got two options, but do you even ask yourself how capable you are of doing that?
It's probably true, actually. And even to your point about your parents as well, I saw some bits about myself in there as well. It's true.
Nice.
You know, like you always look around thinking, fuck, am I doing this right? I'm doing this right? Who am I doing this for? But yeah, thanks for sharing that, man. It was
awesome. I think it's great in terms of relevance, because I think my parents only knew what they knew from growing up where they grew up. I don't blame them at all for bringing me up the way they did.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, and I think most important is just realizing that they only knew what they knew, but then we've got the capacity to add on top of that.
And also, I mean, what I'm hearing as well is that surrounding yourself with your teammates, and there's a real essence of mateship and common purpose, and no one leaves anyone, but no one being left behind, has perhaps enabled you to communicate that to mum and dad, whereas that might not have been the case. Correct. And so everybody's learnt, right, which is beautiful, because then you move forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
And only rarely do there has to be adversity to move forward and grow. Unfortunately, that's just it's the pleasure pain thing.
Yep.
You have to have something like that. Well, mate, talk about some of your finest moments. Like, what's obviously you got the photo of the offload. If you kind of sit back, and obviously you've become a father. So when you're kind of reflecting and telling a few stories to the kids around what daddy used to do, and what are some of those things you're going to talk about?
I'm actually just wanting to encourage them to get themselves ready to travel the world, because we're very fortunate living in such an awesome country like Australia that everything's working well. And then when you go overseas, that's when life begins, because you actually assess that not everyone has the same capacity as you do back in Australia. But it's never about comparison. It's just about realization of what they have, what they work with, but also how they get along. I was fortunate in every spring tour that I was a part of, we have what's called a training free day, which means it's just a fancy way of saying day off. So I literally jet off and do something within that country. So one of my favourite places is Torino.
Nice.
The home of Nutella, for your info, John. Mate, there's this there's this drink called a Marocchino. So basically it's a shot of espresso. They mix it up with Nutella. Oh, yeah, seriously.
I've never had that at your place.
Emotional, huh?
I've never had that at your
I'll give
place.
you one next time. I actually got some Nutella, but not branded. It was just from the hazelnuts. Last time I was in Alba, you got to try it. It is sensational.
Okay.
Yeah. Next time you're over.
All right.
No, seriously, yeah, it's worth every single drop. Yeah. It even licked the bloody shot glass that came from.
Travel the world, but goes to a coffee and chocolate.
But Italy was one of my favourite countries to visit because of the diversity from south to north.
Oh, huge.
Oh, my goodness. You go
even
from
one suburb to the next.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what I was surprised is there's no dialect. Obviously, everyone speaks Italian, but you can actually understand it because everyone has that sort of fluency of the singular language. Whereas if you go to France, you've got like traditional, but also the what they call Velan, which is inverse, backwards. So they speak back to front. But
So what? They speak French, but like English speak English, because Italians English
Well, I
will
was gonna
say,
say you
backwards, but
you and your missus have a different dialect.
yeah.
That might just be volume because
No, but it's funny you say that, because I really want to do a bit of research on that, what you just said, because English say the Italians speak backwards, right? Which Latin languages is actually the correct way. English is backwards.
correct.
So if there's a French dialect that is backwards, that means it's spoken the way that English is, but it's a Latin language, which is, I need to know more about this.
No. So basically, it's just the word phrased backwards. So
It's like Ig Pat and Lakers.
sort of. So where it derived from is the word l'envers means the inverse. So they flip that and they call it Velan.
Yeah, right.
So from there, you got terms like Murph, which is femme backwards.
Yeah,
Com, like which is mech.
yeah,
So it's guy backwards.
yeah.
So it's just little phrases like that they'll speak.
Yeah, right. Oh, it's the actual word that's flipped.
Correct. Yeah. Anyway,
Frenchies.
but back to Italy. I think,
now he's back.
yeah, so Fiorentina, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
what a city.
Yeah, beautiful.
I thought you were talking about the steak. I was like, I know.
Yeah. Oh, you're a fan? Or,
My father's from that region.
I mean, such awesome history.
Oh,
I
yeah,
think,
absolutely.
so Galileo's laboratories there. Unbelievable laboratory.
Good meat as well.
Yep. I mean, that and dessert.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Oh, dessert anywhere in Italy you can get a good meal, eh, John?
Absolutely.
You've had a few there.
I've had many of them.
I love that you every time you went to a different place, you always tried to go off and do something on your training free days.
Yeah.
That's so cool, man. Getting the opportunity to one, play for your country, and then two, to go overseas and actually experience that country as well. And that's bucket list shit. That's really good.
I mean, I even got that capitulated in Italy that I learnt Le Canzone del Sole. Do you know that song?
I don't know the song. I know what you said though, but
Yeah. Okay.
nah.
So
I probably do know the song, to be honest.
yeah, it's like O mare nero, mare nero, mare ne, tu et chiaro trasparente come ne.
I haven't heard that remix, but
Okay. No. So basically,
What does it say?
it's like the Black Ocean.
Yeah.
Trying to sort of give a message through that. I'm not too sure, but
Mate, 10 points being the first person.
To
82
sing.
episodes in, we've had a first person start singing.
You're a really good singer as well. Do you like to sing?
no. I'm the only Islander you'll ever meet that cannot sing.
Yeah, because all of the Islander mates that I've got, they're all great singers, and
Correct.
it pisses me off how they're all really good
trust me.
singers.
I mean, you heard me sing just then.
No, it was good, man. It was,
No,
wait,
no.
have you heard this bloke?
No. I kid you not. So when I was 5, I actually got kicked out of the church choir because
That bad.
yeah, I was that bad. So get
This
this.
is sinful. Get out.
No. So my mum has this rule saying you're only allowed when I say you're allowed out. So we were sitting in choir and we all started singing and I was so off key. I had no idea. And she's like, "That's okay. You can go play outside." And it's like, "Oh yeah, sweet, okay."
Everybody wins.
No, but not realizing that I was so off key.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah.
Can I ask about the influence of media? Twofold. Media in terms of journos and things. Yeah, what is their power or their influence? You know, one, did you watch it? And I guess I'm curious as a team, you know, especially maybe facing the All Blacks and their prime, it's going to be, and the British are horrible at this, you know. But
Yeah, why is that?
I really don't know. But are you guys taking heed of that? Is that affecting you, or I guess in your time, is Eddie saying, you know, kind of banning newspapers? I guess how does that work, and does that hurt? You know, when you're reading, because I don't think any player ever goes out there to play a bad game. No one at the level of representing their country is not good.
No.
And so, yes, the scorelines might reflect different things, but no one is actively going out there to sabotage. And do you know what I mean? Like, it's just too big a deal to play for your country.
Yeah. No. So I guess we all get media trained, but we also get.
We could do with some of that.
You guys are doing great. I think 82 episodes already, and not one fault.
Yeah, exactly. We haven't been pulled off yet.
100%.
So much innuendo in this bit.
We haven't had that guest.
Love it.
Yeah.
Jeez, this reminds me of the UK version of The Office. So I guess with media, there's a couple of things that most people don't realise. We actually get worded up, or we get an anticipation of what the media will ask us in order to prepare. But at the same time, we always keep in mind of the bigger picture. So any message we give, whether it's social media or interviews, it's always about the group. So as diplomatic as that sounds, we want to make sure that the brand of Wallabies Rugby is still maintained.
Yeah.
There are times where in social media you actually can be yourself.
Yeah.
Which is good. It's probably why I got rid of social media, because I don't know how to promote myself. In saying that, well, it's just the fact that I much prefer being the person pulling the curtains versus being the main star. But it was interesting to analyse. There was a time right when the British and Irish Lions were here in Australia, 2013. There's a player named James O'Connor, and he called himself the brand, meaning he isolated himself away from the group and just said, I want to keep up my brand and playing the brand I want to play. So that's when it got heated to the point where media journalists were just thriving. I think there's something about journalists just to hunt for a really captivating story. And obviously because
That's what
scandal sells, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I even get to the point where I challenge my friends to throw in this word in their interviews. It'll be like Diplodocus, a dinosaur. Just any unrealistic word that doesn't even fit in the sentence. Obviously, I actually came out financially better because they'd always lose.
Yeah.
So there's always those incentives. But in terms of the media perspective, they just love hunting for a good story. And think of journos trying to get a grab. It's just a sentence, but they'll work that sentence.
Yeah.
And it always makes me chuckle when you've just run 80 minutes, and you may have lost, and they grab you straight away and they go, "How do you feel?" And it's like, my heart's racing. My ears are falling off, and you're asking me a question. It's just, it's interesting from that side. And then were you given any kind of social media training as well? Because I guess we're of the similar kind of vintage, so a lot of that stuff wasn't around.
Correct.
Facebook came in 07? 07? 08?
No idea.
But a lot of stuff,
Instagram 2012.
It wasn't that really, really prevalent.
Correct.
So I don't know, I almost think that maybe you've enjoyed it, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is my thinking is, you've enjoyed a career where the social media limelight's not been on you. I often reflect, well, not reflect because I didn't do it, but I often wonder if like the stars of yesterday and the actors of yesterday and the celebrities of yesterday loved it because they could go places. They weren't always getting selfies. They could play up if they wanted to.
They wouldn't have got cancelled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's that kind of little era where actually it was great. You might not have had the fiscal side of things. You might not have had the earnings, but Christ, you could just be yourself.
Oh, John, where do you want me to start? The fact that I could go to a pub, drink 4 jugs of beer, and not get judged by that.
Yeah.
Amazing.
It was a Monday though, mate.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
But that prepped
Monday
me up
Madness,
for the week.
Madness Mondays, Manic Mondays. Or?
Yeah.
But
that's fair. Yeah, that's actually. I mean, that's a massive point. I was listening to podcast. Oh, actually, with Trevor Noah the other day, with Direct
nice.
CEO podcast. I saw him last week.
wait, Trevor Noah?
Yeah.
Wow.
And he was talking about when he goes out for dinner with his missus, even if they're just having a good time and they might be gesticulating a little bit, as like you would do with with V, people would take pictures and then the press would say, having a fight and all that kind of stuff. And he's like, no, we were just getting animated over dinner. Like, we were just having a laugh and stuff. But they snap a picture in the right way and put whatever headline on it. And you don't really think of that kind of stuff. How annoying. But it's all on the clickbait stuff. So it's interesting just to, I guess, your bit of saying, how good is it to go out to have a skinful when you want to do that? 'Cause we do that.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean?
Everyone does that.
And we get away with it. You get away with it. So it's interesting.
And I really feel sorry for this generation coming through because life as we experienced it, there's not many human interactions that are developing as it should be. I think
we talk about this a lot.
Yeah, which is, and I think it's a critical point in the sense that if we're on the trajectory that society is on it at the moment, to what extent will it either benefit or not benefit human society?
I
don't think it's good.
I think people are more focused on being human doing rather than human being.
Yeah. Great statement. Yeah.
That would be my kind of bit. And I mean, without going off on a tangent on the whole working from home thing and all that, but relationships, community, the reason why a lot of people struggled in COVID because we didn't have that. We were forced to stay at home with our family, or if you're on your own.
Mm-hmm.
Yet now you have a choice, and yet people still want to do that. I don't understand. But I get my energy from people, so I'm never going to understand it.
No, and I think what you say there, John, is correct in the sense that why not be virtual if that's the case? Why not live the Matrix? Because that's sort of the era that we're currently going through.
Yeah, man, it's almost there.
Yeah.
I think about that all the time. We're almost at a stage now we could pretty much just put a VR goggles on and just sit in your house and just live a virtual reality because you don't really need to be physical anymore.
Yeah.
It's crazy, man.
Very crazy. So
mate, you retired 2019.
Wallabies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that a big decision?
No, I think...
do you kind of get a sense of when you know, or...?
You actually do. What was interesting at that time was it was a World Cup year and I was trying to make it through to my third World Cup, but missed out on the opportunity. But at the same time, most people would say, oh, okay, move on. But I actually wanted to stay there because the up-and-coming generation need that exposure to the point where because of the inexperience, they missed out. So I guess whether I had impact or not is one thing, but I think it's really important for the guys that are seeing their time through that they pass on that wisdom to the younger folk. Obviously, the game keeps reinventing the wheel, but then at the same time, some of the traditional values like having a beer with your opposite after every game. You go to the change room, exchange beers, chew the fat about the game that was or whatever you want to talk about. They're one of the best things that rugby has to offer. And it's instilling those type of principles into them.
Does that happen?
Oh, all the time.
Does it?
Yeah.
Even to this day. Like, I know back in the day.
Yeah.
But that happens this day. So, like, you play Eden Park, Bledisloe. And the result is what it is, but you still have beers afterwards and just...
Yeah, like even their social media share it.
I think that's fair. I didn't know that.
Man, that's nuts, man. That would never happen in Italy.
Yeah.
Like AC Milan versus Inter.
There'd be cages again.
They own the same stadium.
Yeah.
And they still wouldn't be allowed to. No, man, no way.
Yeah, is that what, the Bernabeu? No,
San Siro.
Yeah.
San Siro.
So you were very conscious of passing down those values.
Yeah, because...
other people an opportunity.
Because ideally, they're the fundamentals of life.
Yeah.
It's giving versus receiving. Whether I gave something that was impactful was up to the person. But, yeah, it's just that notion of giving is probably one of the best things. And I think so when I moved to England, I'd always play against the South Africans and the Kiwis that you play against in these test matches. And it's always good to speak with them because they obviously have a different mindset to what you're going through. So if I take an example, I caught up with one of the Kiwis that played in my team in Leicester, and it was just drilled to them that you've got to leave the jersey in a better place than when you first found it. Like, I mean, where do I sign? That's something that people want to belong to.
Yeah.
Whereas over in Australia, it's like, oh yeah, we'll just give you 100,000 for this year, 200,000 for the next year, based on how many tries you scored. It's like, you get fucked.
Yeah.
It's not really
Just a job.
Yeah, correct. Whereas it's that I call it equity theory in the sense that you're doing this because you know the reward is greater. So, yeah, and that was just powerful. Even South Africans.
Yeah.
Have you heard the South African national anthem?
No.
Okay.
There's like 3, isn't there? They sing it in different languages, don't
Yeah,
they?
so there's 5 different languages in their national anthem.
I should know that.
I don't know. No, but and that's where Nelson Mandela, what a guy. I was privileged to actually shake his hand in one of the test matches.
Wow.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, like, you look at opportunities, like I met old Lizzie, like, absolute cracker. I'll tell you what, she's a pisshead too. No, so every time they have, like, these formal gatherings, she'll carry a chalice. Not many people know what's in it. She left it on one of the mantelpieces. One of the guys takes a swig of it. It's like pure gin. I'm like, good on you, Lizzie. Yeah.
That's cool.
If only King Charles could do the same thing.
Matt, I want to talk a little bit about you, I guess, transitioning over, from player to corporate. How has that journey been in terms of, I guess, starting again? Because it must be difficult to come out as a personality, and you are, and big personality, and you've achieved so much at a young age. What was that transition like, going from, I guess, mateship, common purpose, common goal, drills, training, a very structured day, structured diet, to then desk job. There's a mobile phone, there's a laptop, go.
I mean, I was pretty fortunate that I was doing that during my time in rugby.
Right, okay.
Yeah. Not necessarily to say that I'm trying to future-proof myself. It's just understanding, like, what other areas I could explore. So in the GFC of 2007, we were actually forced to get on the phones and call our members, simply because money's tight and we still want your membership. Understand if you need to get rid of that membership to save a few pennies from your end, but it'd be great to revisit this at a later date. Just having those core skills, because rugby will always end, or sport will always end. It's understanding what you can do from there on that will make the bigger impact. But I guess the biggest gap was knowing when it's ending. All professional athletes go through this lull.
Yeah.
I went through it too. I mean, I didn't realise at the time, maybe because I was in a state of, I'm not going through that, just thinking it wasn't real. But in all seriousness, it actually was the fact I was depressed. Not depressed because of it's ended, depressed in the sense of, what do I do now? I've done this for so long. And not to the dexterity of what veterans go through, but you understand what they would have gone through once they finish from their service and their duty. I mean, you're trying to, like, you spend 15 years trying to get to this pinnacle, and then it just drops like a massive cliff. So in my own experience, what I realized is it took me about 8 months to realize, fuck, I am depressed. And at that time, I was seeing a girl that probably wasn't the best option, because I just didn't realize I was depressed, and I was probably compounding that onto her. But at the same time, moving back from UK to Australia, just anything that could go wrong did go wrong. Murphy's Law. So I just decided to call up a counsellor because I just needed help. I couldn't rely on my parents because they wouldn't know what.
It'd be hard for them to communicate.
Correct. Or even understand to that point.
Yeah.
But, I just got to the point where I needed help. And I was pretty fortunate that this counsellor, his name's Chris Egan, really. So I booked 90-minute sessions, but for some reason he allowed it to go overtime just because that was his nature. He wanted. So this took about a good 12 months just to let it sink in. At the time, I was also trying to discover other pathways. I tried coaching, not ideal, but what helped me was coaching kids at Sydney Grammar because I literally did what I did growing up. So I wasn't teaching them rugby, I was teaching them science. And they knew that analogy of dispersing force through a shield, which is the way they defend, or a spear you penetrate. But through that depression phase, I learned so much about myself because I actually didn't spend the time from when I noticed the validation of my parents up until then of what I truly am capable of. But I really had an awesome support network too. Like friends that have been through right from even before I became famous. They were the real heroes in my book because they just allowed me to talk. They supported me, and also my wider network were able to assist me along the way.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And is that something you still practice now? Are you, I guess, talking about what we spoke about earlier in terms of awareness, do you still have those bits now where you're kind of reflecting and maybe seeing people, or do you not need to now? I guess just from a coaching or a counsellor side.
So if there was one thing that I would say I dominate in is reading people's body language.
Yeah.
In the sense that they don't even realise their body's giving me the message. But they're communicating it from their mouth in a different way. Like, if only you know. Yeah. But what's great about that is because I'm realising, they actually go, oh, how can you see that? But then they actually go, what am I doing that's giving you that message? And in their eyes, they actually are really grateful that you're paying them attention. Because I think they go through life just the way that they are, but not many people understand them as a person. But it takes a true eye to sort of realise that. I think that's where I was able to anticipate different types of attack in rugby simply because I would do my homework in terms of body language. Yeah. If this guy turns this way, right, I'm going for that intercept. And it paid off. So it was never a gamble. It was just really identifying the way humans communicate without even communicating. That was my superpower, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So
it's a cool superpower.
But this is where in the corporate environment, it's what's great to see is how they try and be so diplomatic, but deep down inside they're crying.
Yeah.
In the sense that they just want to be heard. And this is where I say, hey, look, you don't need to impress me. You've already done that. What you need to do is impress yourself. Because it's one thing to try and encourage someone else to be persuaded by what you're saying, but do you really believe it? And they're like,
and that circles back to validation.
Yeah.
Right? And even in a corporate sense, or from friends or family, like I think there's an element of us that we all like to be seen, we all like to be heard. Yeah. And we all like to be recognised, and that's a pat on the back, that's a cuddle, that's a well done, that's a bonus, that's a take a day off. They all fall under the same thing of recognition.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't care what personality type you are. For me, that I think that they're the basic things that we need to know where we're going, because we're all navigating the path. Hence, lifestyle pirates. See how I did that?
Love it.
But we're all navigating the path. But you only know the path is because you find your boundaries. You know, and so when you've got people guiding you and telling you right and wrong, and you know, advising or coaching or your mates or whatever, your network, your community, that enables you to navigate, you know, or make informed decisions.
Yeah.
You know, and so without that, it's tough. You know, look at schools nowadays where, you know, I'm not out that old where you used to get caned, but you'd get detention, or you'd have to stand outside, or you'd stand in the corner, or things like that. You know, or if you did something well, you got a hug from the teacher. You know. But you're not allowed to do that stuff now. So if you're a kid, how do you know what you're doing? And of course, most parents think little Timmy or little Susie or little Sammy's an angel. So it's like, well, how are they learning and developing and establishing that? So it's tough. So I like that.
No, I would love to see that sort of come back in a vicious cycle, in the sense that because we're not getting feedback, look at what we're creating. So can we actually provide that feedback loop?
Go on.
No, I wasn't saying it.
Oh, I think we're starting to see that already.
Yeah. I agree.
Awesome.
You know, I mean, without getting on a soapbox, but with a lot of the younger generation where they perhaps don't have discipline or boundaries, that's where you're getting a lot of questionable choice, life decisions at a very, very early age, you know, be it pronouns or operations or all that kind of stuff. And then the influence, and this is where the social media piece comes in for me, is you're then influenced by those people that you're following, and they may or may not have the skills, knowledge or brain to talk and go from there, you know. So a lot of it's kind of coming down to who you're hanging out with and who you're watching.
Yeah, your echo chamber.
Yeah.
Mate, I'm conscious of your time, so I've got a couple more questions. You got any more technical questions on rugby?
No, I'm good for technical.
Actually, I've got a question for you.
Oh,
why is it in Formula One that they're always trying to restrict the limitations of the gearbox? Or sorry, not the gearbox, the output.
What do you mean by that?
So every year they always try to limit the is it the output, or is it more so the restrictions on the chassis that they can only go so much in terms of whether they do differences in the wings or the actual chassis itself?
So you might be talking about this. Usually, so the gearbox is what the suspension hangs off. It's called a stressed member.
Yep.
Right. So the gearbox casing influences how your suspension geometry setup is.
Okay.
So you either have push rod or pull rod suspension systems on the two. The big thing that they've been talking about gearbox differentiation between the two is that Ferrari run a push rod, Red Bull run a pull rod. So they're thinking that, you know what, which way is the better way to go? Is it this way? Is it that way? But really, it's not only that part of the car that determines the rear flow of the air out of the back of the car. It's also where it starts up the front. So the torque on gearboxes is more to the point of what the suspension is doing for the gearbox. The gearbox is sort of, it works within what's called a legality box, and you can't really go out of that sort of physical form factor.
Yeah.
Everything that bolts onto that, though, is what's controllable. So, yeah, there's no real big law on gearboxes and stuff like that, because it also is a crash structure for the rear. So the limitations of what you can do with the physicality of the gearbox is not much. It's just the appendages that go onto it. Yeah, so, yeah, I don't know if I answered your question.
No,
yeah.
you did.
Yeah.
And the reason why I asked this is because of your subscribers. Now, think of this in the stage of rugby. You're trying to think of every way you can get advantage. That's all you're trying to do in rugby. So
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the back is also manipulated by the front as well. So, yeah. So what you change at the front can also affect the back.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of Formula One. I'm
nice.
just not a fan of the FIA.
Yeah, I don't think anyone is.
Yeah.
Well, we've sworn quite a lot tonight, so I'm sure. What's your thoughts? Because I can imagine you still participate in terms of watching the rugby, and you probably still got some mates there. Like, what are your thoughts on the state of? Well, I'm actually curious the differences of when you played in the UK, Southern Hemisphere, Northern Hemisphere, but also what's your thoughts on the states of rugby now?
Yeah, good question. So when I first started, the coach they brought back for the 2023 World Cup was that same coach. He had the same strategy back then as he did in 2023, thus not being able to work to the player's strengths.
Yeah.
I think the person that they've brought in, Joe Schmidt, is the right candidate because he's allowing the players to play to their strengths and their capabilities. And it's shown by the brand of rugby that they're playing now. Though previously with the previous coach, they were limited because that coach was very statistic orientated, where he wanted to dominate territory or possession versus, well, hang on, this guy's good at running, so why don't we just give him the ball? And this time of year is the November Test Series. They've actually got this thing called a Grand Slam. So a Grand Slam is where you play against the British and Irish Lions teams. And it's a nice build-up for what's to be anticipated for next year. I guess to answer your question, John, I'm loving it because as a former player, it's really great to see the innovation from different coaches and what they actually want to import, not just for the game, but the sustainability of the game. Right now, we're competing against soccer, AFL, and rugby league, and we're at the bottom rung. So, one, how do we drive the popularity back? Obviously, being a fickle country in terms of support, we only celebrate when we're winning. But I think the diehards want to see that revival of success. What that looks like, I'm not too sure. But I think we're on the right track.
Yeah.
Because the average age now is about 26. Previously it was about 30, 32. But that's where I think this coach, what he's doing now is bleeding new blood because he's starting to realise that these guys are now becoming senior players. So how do we fuel that sustainability engine, not only to grow the game, but also to keep the talent in Australia? Most of them get exported because there's better deals in Japan or UK or France.
Same with football.
Yeah. So I think in order to try and retain that, there's a couple of things that I think, in my opinion, that the Rugby Australia need to consider, because rugby league is just dominating the West Sydney market to the point where even guys from rugby union are transferring to league because of the opportunity.
Because it looks more Hollywood.
Sorry?
Is it because it looks more Hollywood?
No, not necessarily. It's just ease of access. Over there,
Yeah, it's fair.
the market is less privileged. So they're trying to find a way out. Consider it like Compton, LA. Like most gangsters actually want to get out, but they can't because they're too tribalised.
Yeah.
And it'll most likely be similar to Western Sydney in terms of the different demographics there.
I like that. And that's exciting to hear that you're excited about it. That's good. That's good.
Yeah, there was a time where I actually was second guessing, saying, "Oh, we did all this work for nothing." Because I was fortunate enough to be in teams where it was actually quite steady progress, whereas right now it's like up and down like a roller coaster, and you want to get it to a point where it's like a blue chip company, steady on the uprise. But I still think we're a far way off from that point.
Mate, what would you I mean, you've had one hell of a journey. Yeah.
Have I?
Oh, you have. Like, you've been around the world, you've flown the flag for the country. You know, it's been super exciting, and you've still got many years to come, mate.
No, I appreciate that.
What would you say to a young Tatafu now? What would you say to a younger version of yourself?
Yeah, I love this question because depending on what age, if I was to say to my 12-year-old self, I'd say just keep doing what you're doing. However, if it was my 18-year-old self, I'd say believe in yourself more. Because I think that was at the time where my mother helped my sister out in the US. She didn't realize I was actually doing all this rugby crap too. She only found out when we had a schoolboy tour to Tonga to play against the Tongan schoolboys. And once she heard, she actually communicated to the whole family to host a pig on, like 5 pigs on the spit and have the whole team over. That was great. And she did that all the way from the US. So I guess at that time, I actually didn't really believe in myself because I was wondering, I'm going against their wishes. Is that right? Is that wrong? Not sure. So, yeah, I think at different stages. Do you?
And what do you say to yourself now?
What I say to myself now is always be curious, because everyone has a different path, and it's never about comparison, because that's a thief of joy. Everyone's got a story to tell, and it's always worth listening to, because as you shared with me your story, I was like, what the hell? Amazing. How on earth? And from the time that we had that wine in the city, Martin Place, I was like, right, where do I sign up?
Must be a different story. No.
But yeah.
Well, mate, on that note, thank you very much for coming on the show, sharing your pearls of wisdom, sharing your story.
Thanks for the lesson.
Amazing, mate. And thank you for educating me on something other than football. And
no, thanks heaps for the opportunity. And I'm sure this will be one of many episodes where it just keeps getting better with better guests than me.
Man, I loved it, mate. Honestly, that was enlightening. I learned so much. I think I'm going to watch some rugby now as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. What's this one coming up? The Lions? Or is that coming up soon?
Next year.
All right, book me in, mate.
So, che cosa fai stasera?
Stasera?
Sì.
Stasera dopo qua vai a letto e dormi. Devo alzare presto.
Dormi?
Domani. Yeah.
Perché?
Perché devo alzare a 3.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wake up at 3 o'clock, brother.
That's fair.
Ma grazie. Ok. Ciao ragazzi. Buona serata.
Ciao.